Imagine a young German girl, born Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst, arriving in the frozen, glittering heart of Russia. She wasn't destined for greatness, at least not on paper. She wasn't the daughter of kings, nor the heir to an empire. She was a minor princess, chosen more out of political convenience than prestige. But Sophie had something far rarer than noble blood, an unshakable hunger for power. From the moment she set foot in the Russian court, she studied everything: the language, the culture, the people, even the weaknesses of her own husband, the future Peter III. While others saw an awkward foreign girl, Sophie was quietly transforming herself into something far more dangerous. Catherine, the woman who would outshine them all. Yet Catherine's rise to power wasn't written in dry treaties or military victories alone. Her ascent was carved through passion, seduction, and scandal. Behind the velvet curtains of the Winter Palace, Catherine learned how desire could be a weapon sharper than any sword. Her marriage was a battlefield of its own, cold, loveless, and humiliating. Peter III was cruel, unstable, and obsessed with toy soldiers more than his own wife. And in this suffocating prison of marriage, Catherine turned to where so many royals secretly did: the arms of lovers. Affairs became her lifeline. But for Catherine, they weren't just moments of pleasure. They were alliances, relationships that gave her influence, loyalty, and the emotional fuel to survive a toxic court. From military officers to powerful courtiers, her bed became as much a throne as the one she would one day seize. And soon, whispers began to spread. Whispers of a young woman whose nights were as legendary as her politics. Whispers that she entertained not one lover, but many. That she could seduce with her eyes alone. That in the frozen palaces of Russia, the empress's hunger was never satisfied. Some called it immorality, others called it strategy. But everyone, friends, enemies, and foreign spies alike, knew one thing: Catherine the Great would forever blur the line between lust and power. And as her reign unfolded, those whispers would erupt into the most scandalous rumors in royal history. Tales so shocking that centuries later, they are still repeated in hushed, scandalized tones. Because Catherine was not simply a queen. She was the embodiment of desire and domination, and the world would never stop talking about her bedchamber. Behind the golden gates of the Winter Palace, Catherine's true kingdom was not just Russia, it was her bedroom. Her official marriage to Peter III was a disaster from the start. He mocked her, humiliated her, and preferred playing with toy soldiers over sharing her bed. Catherine was a wife in name only, trapped in a loveless union that left her desperate, vulnerable, and dangerously lonely. And so she looked elsewhere. What began as secret affairs quickly turned into a whispered legend of a woman whose lovers were as famous as her battles. From dashing soldiers to powerful statesmen, Catherine's bed became both a sanctuary and a battlefield. Her first great passion, Sergei Saltykov, is even rumored to have fathered her son. Then came Grigory Orlov, a military officer whose strength and loyalty helped her orchestrate the coup that would place a crown on her head. But this was more than romance. These men were carefully chosen, tested, and rewarded. Catherine's affairs were not reckless indulgence. They were strategies of survival. A lover in her arms often meant an ally in her court. A night of passion could transform into years of political loyalty. Still, the whispers grew darker. Courtiers claimed Catherine kept a private system for selecting her favorites. Young men were secretly vetted by trusted servants before being presented to her. Some even said she created a hidden chamber where her lovers were trained to satisfy her, like soldiers drilled for battle. Whether truth or slander, the rumors spread like wildfire across Europe. Foreign diplomats sent home scandalous reports of an empress with an endless appetite, a woman whose bedchamber was more powerful than any throne. And as her list of lovers grew, so too did the tales of cruelty. Some claimed that once Catherine tired of a man, he was dismissed with riches and estates. Others whispered more sinister endings: exile, ruin, even mysterious deaths. To her enemies, Catherine was no longer a monarch, but a predator draped in jewels, a woman who devoured men as easily as she devoured nations. The truth was far more complicated. Catherine was intelligent, cultured, and deeply lonely. But in the brutal world of Russian politics, her personal life became a weapon her enemies would twist against her. Every kiss became a scandal, every affair a target. And soon her bedroom would no longer be just the subject of gossip. It would birth the darkest, most shocking myth in royal history. Before Catherine could become the most powerful woman in Europe, she was chained to one of its most pathetic men, Peter III of Russia, her husband, her tormentor, her greatest obstacle. To the world, he was heir to the Russian Empire. But behind palace doors, he was a drunk, a fool, a man-child obsessed with German soldiers and his toy regiments. Catherine, elegant and ambitious, was forced to share her life with a man who ignored her, mocked her, and humiliated her at every turn. Their marriage was a battlefield without love. Peter paraded mistresses openly, belittled Catherine in public, and spent nights in drunken debauchery while leaving his wife cold and alone. Whispers spread that Peter was incapable of consummating their marriage, that Russia's future heir might never come from the Tsar himself. In the shadows, Catherine searched for escape. Her first lover, Sergei Saltykov, is rumored to have fathered her son, Paul, though Peter claimed the child as his own. To Catherine, the affair wasn't just passion, it was survival. Producing an heir meant securing her place in a court that despised outsiders. But as years passed, her misery deepened. Peter insulted Russian traditions, praised their enemies, and alienated the powerful Orthodox Church. His reign was a disaster before it even began. The nobility despised him, the army mocked him, the people feared what his rule would bring. And Catherine waited. Every cruel word, every humiliation, every night he staggered drunk through the halls of the palace. She remembered them all. Her patience hardened into resolve. If Peter were to sit on the throne, Russia would collapse. If Catherine did not act, she would be destroyed. When Peter finally ascended in 1762, Catherine knew it was her moment. With the help of her lover, Grigory Orlov, and his brothers, commanders in the Imperial Guard, she plotted a coup that would shake Russia to its core. On a summer morning in July, Catherine rode through the streets of St. Petersburg, dressed in the uniform of a guard officer. Soldiers and priests bowed before her, declaring her Catherine II, Empress of Russia. Peter was captured without a fight. Days later, he was dead. Officially, natural causes. Unofficially, he had been strangled, beaten, and silenced forever. Catherine was free. Her brutal marriage was over, and from its ashes she would rise, not just as a ruler, but as one of history's most feared and scandalous women. But if her marriage had ended in blood, her reign would begin in passion. For Catherine's hunger for power, for lovers, for immortality was only just beginning. With Peter dead and the crown on her head, Catherine was finally free. Free to rule, free to dominate, and free to indulge in the passions she had been denied. But Catherine's lovers were never just men of desire. They were pieces on her chessboard, soldiers in her private war for survival. Each affair was a carefully chosen alliance, each embrace a pact sealed in whispers and candlelight. Her first great love as empress was Grigory Orlov, the soldier who had risked everything to help her seize the throne. To Catherine, he was more than a lover. He was a symbol of loyalty, courage, and passion. She rewarded him with lands, titles, and wealth. But as years passed, even Orlov could not hold her attention forever. Then came Grigory Potemkin, perhaps the greatest love of her life. He was a brilliant general, a man of fire and strategy, and Catherine's equal in both intellect and desire. Together, they forged Russia's empire, conquering lands, building cities, and reshaping the destiny of a nation. Their relationship was so deep, so consuming, that some historians believe they married in secret. Even after their romance cooled, Potemkin remained her most trusted ally, helping her choose future lovers as if managing the empire of her heart. But Catherine's appetite was legendary. Foreign envoys and rival courts whispered that the empress kept a secret system for her favorites. Young noblemen, handsome officers, even poets were rumored to be vetted by her ladies-in-waiting before being presented to her bedchamber. If they pleased her, they were showered with palaces, estates, and riches beyond imagination. If they failed, they vanished, exiled from her sight, their names erased from courtly memory. To her enemies, this was scandal beyond measure. Pamphlets spread across Europe painting Catherine as a nymphomaniac in jewels, a woman enslaved by lust, more beast than queen. They claimed she changed lovers like gowns, and that no man was safe from her hunger. Yet behind the gossip was something far more dangerous. Catherine had turned intimacy into power. Her lovers were not toys, but allies. Through them, she bound generals, courtiers, and nobles to her throne. Through them, she secured her rule in a world that wanted her to fail. But with every new affair, the whispers grew louder, darker, more grotesque. Europe was not content to call her a seductress. They wanted to brand her as a monster. And soon, a myth would spread, a tale so obscene, so brutal, that it would haunt her name for centuries. Every powerful woman in history has faced lies meant to destroy her, but none so vile, so grotesque as the myth that clung to Catherine the Great. It was whispered in candle-lit salons of Paris, spread in the taverns of London, and scribbled in secret pamphlets across Europe, that the Empress of Russia died attempting to couple with a horse. It is a story so infamous that even today, centuries later, her name cannot escape it. But where did it come from? And why such a monstrous lie? Catherine's enemies hated her with a venom few rulers ever faced. To them, she was not just a woman sitting on a throne. She was a foreigner, a usurper, and above all, a woman who dared to rule like a man. In the eyes of jealous kings and bitter nobles, her many lovers were not proof of her humanity, but fuel for slander. So they twisted her reputation into a weapon. If she took lovers, they claimed she was insatiable. If she ruled with iron will, they said she was unnatural. And when simple gossip wasn't enough, they invented something so shocking that it would stain her legacy forever. The myth of the horse was not born from fact, but from misogyny sharpened into cruelty. It was the ultimate attempt to reduce a great empress into a creature of perversion. The truth. Catherine died in 1796 in her palace at Tsarskoye Selo from a stroke at the age of 67. But the truth was never enough. Scandal is always louder than fact. And so, as she lay in her coffin dressed in imperial jewels, the whispers continued, that her reign ended not with dignity, but with disgrace. It was a lie so powerful that even in the modern world, her name is still chained to it. But if you strip away the filth, the slander, and the cruelty, a different picture emerges, not of a woman destroyed by lust, but of a ruler who used love, power, and passion to bend an empire to her will. Catherine the Great was many things: lover, seductress, conqueror, visionary. But the one thing she never was the monster her enemies tried to create. Catherine the Great's reign was more than scandal. It was transformation. She entered Russia as a powerless German girl, and she left it as the most powerful woman on earth. Under her hand, Russia expanded its empire, modernized its laws, and embraced the Enlightenment. She read Voltaire in bed, wrote letters with philosophers, and dreamed of a nation that could rival the brilliance of Europe. And yet, her legacy is tangled in lust. Her real love life was passionate, sometimes reckless, but always deeply human. Catherine adored her lovers not as toys, but as companions, as political allies, as men who gave her comfort in a cold palace of daggers and intrigue. She elevated them, gave them wealth, titles, even palaces. But when they betrayed her, she cast them aside with ruthless precision. To her, love was not weakness, it was power. But scandal is eternal. Her enemies made sure that when history remembered her, it would remember the rumors, the affairs, and the whispers louder than the reforms or the victories. To many, she is still the woman who wanted too much. And perhaps that is the true tragedy. Catherine was no saint. She lied, she betrayed, she indulged. She took lovers freely, even shamelessly, and in doing so, she dared to claim the freedom that men had always enjoyed without consequence. That, more than any law or conquest, may be her most dangerous act. Because in the end, Catherine the Great shattered the mold of what a woman could be. She was not a queen consort, nor a pawn of marriage, nor a silent figure beside a king. She was the king. She was the conqueror. She was Russia itself. And so her story leaves us with a haunting question. Was Catherine remembered for her lust, or was lust simply the weapon history used to silence her power? Even now, centuries later, the answer cuts both ways.